What's up, college sports fans? I'm Stuckey.
I'm Colin Wilson.
I'm Mike Calabrese.
I'm Maria Marino.
I'm Charlie DiSturco, and we're excited that the Big Bets on Campus brand is launching its very own YouTube channel.
You'll be able to find every episode of the BBOC podcast, live shows, and other college sports content on this new channel.
Not only will the channel be dedicated to betting on college sports, but you'll also be able to find exclusive interviews with former college athletes,
college football power rankings,
and updates on other topics like the brand new College Football 25 video game series and the ins and outs of the recruiting trail all the way down to the transfer portal.
Whether you're into college football,
college basketball,
college baseball, or any of the college sports,
we are the home for college sports, and BBOC is the channel for you.
Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of the action. I'll see you there.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Fantasy Flex podcast from the Action Network and Fantasy Labs. I'm your host, Chris Raybon, and on today's episode, we're going to discuss fantasy football league winners. As always, I'm joined by one of the most accurate rankers and projectors in the game, the odds maker, Sean Kerner. Sean, what's going on?
What's up? I can't believe we're like almost a week away from the season almost starting. How are you doing?
I'm excited. You know, we just got our final 53-man roster, so I could kind of clean up some loose ends projection-wise and really start digging into props. We'll have our props episode over on the Action Network podcast, so be sure to check that out as well. But for this one, we're going to talk league winners at each position. We'll start with quarterback and then go running back, wide receiver, tight end. Before we do, just want to remind everyone quickly, our 2024 fantasy football draft kit is available right now over at FantasyLabs.com. You can find all of our fantasy football rankings and player projections there, our entire draft kit. And remember, we're both top 5 in season-long fantasy projection accuracy over the past 3 seasons. Over in the Fantasy Pros accuracy contest. So you definitely want to be using those rankings and projections over at FantasyLabs.com from us for all of your fantasy draft and projection needs, props, whatever you need. And the promo code FLEX20 gets you $20 off when you sign up at FantasyLabs.com/flex. That's promo code FLEX20 at FantasyLabs.com/flex. All right, let's jump into league winners. And before we start, any kind of, personal definition of league winners? Because I think kind of like sleeper and bust, it could mean different things depending on who you ask. So how do you define a league winner?
League winner is just a player that just completely obliterates their ADP and literally helps you win a league. Preferably they did good in the fantasy playoffs too. That's not really the criteria I'm going with here. But like someone like Sam Laporta, he was the tight end 17 last year. Maybe you got him in the late rounds or picked him up and he finished as the literal tight end 1 overall. So if you had him, you probably, made it to your championship and even won it thanks to him. So I just think it's players that have a massive ceiling based on their ADP, maybe some unrealized upside. But there can be all sorts of definitions. But I think at the end of the day, they probably had to crush where you got them.
Yeah, I'm with you. I kind of define it as guys who essentially finish, as elite, top 2, top 3 quarterback or tight end, top 6 running back, wide receiver. But they also crushed ADP, meaning you don't have to pay those prices. So, like, if you draft Josh Allen QB1 and he finishes as the QB1, I'm not calling him a league winner because you paid, the full price. But if you draft, let's say, Anthony Richardson QB6 and he finishes QB1, that's a little more league winner-esque. So it's not completely like, off the radar sleeper guys who are just trying to beat ADP. We're still looking for guys who are going to be drafted probably. At least I am. I look for guys that usually are going to be drafted with some fairly early round picks that maybe people are sleeping on a little. Although at some positions you can go a little deeper, but we'll see how it goes. Let's start at quarterback. You actually do like some deeper guys with lower ADPs at the quarterback position for league winners.
Yeah, so for potential league winners, I'll say it again, but my two sleepers from the last pod were Caleb Williams at QB 13 and Sam Darnold at QB 28. So check out that pod for the full explanation of that. But I'm targeting two guys that go outside the top 25. I did that last year with Jordan Love and Brock Purdy. Both those guys were league winners. I don't think these guys have that kind of upside, but both of these quarterbacks have already flashed QB1 upside at times in their career. And both are now being drafted around QB 30 for, obvious reasons. And the first guy is Daniel Jones at QB 29. Again, he's flashed QB1 upside at times in his career, thanks to his rushing upside. That could be compromised a bit this year following his ACL tear that ended his 2023 season. But he's already seen preseason action. He looked okay running the ball. However, he did throw some nasty picks, but that's, again, part of what you get with Daniel Jones. I'm not saying he's a good quarterback, but he's going to have the best pass catching weapon of his career in Malik Neighbors, who I think is going to be elite, starting as soon as this year. So I think Daniel Jones is worth a flyer because he does have that QB1 upside, and he's going at QB 29. So even if he bombs out, loses his job, he's not going to kill you, but he does have the upside you're kind of looking for this late in the draft. And the other guy isn't even a starting quarterback. It's Justin Fields at QB 28. I would say he probably falls outside of the top 30 in most drafts. But his rushing upside just gives him top 10 upside, maybe even top 5 upside if and when he does start. And, I don't think this is Russ Wilson's job for long. If he struggles, they're more than willing, I think, to put Justin Fields there under center. So, he could start any given week and, provide you low-end QB1 value. And I guess there is still a chance that Brandon Ayuk does end up going to Pittsburgh. So that would just raise Justin Fields' ceiling even more. So he's, way more of a gamble this late. But again, he's a guy that's shown that he, has top 10 upside when he does start. So he's another guy that late in drafts, he's a guy that has a ceiling at least to become a potential league winner.
Yeah, I think Russell Wilson's, if you want to call it success last year, which if you want the eye test, he wasn't successful at all, but he had some decent numbers. That was all Sean Payton. I mean, consider that Sean Payton's coached for 16 seasons. His teams have never won fewer than 7 games. Like even last year with that Broncos defense giving up 70 one game, cooked Russell Wilson there all year. They managed to go 8-9. Like that, it's like that's just Peyton. And the Steelers probably going to realize that sooner than later that it's just not going to look as good. Sans Peyton. So yeah, I think Fields gets there. But for me, my process when targeting league winners at quarterback is actually a little bit different. So my sleepers tend to be kind of in the same vein as yours. Like we both like Caleb Williams, both like Jaden Daniels. But for league winners, I actually did kind of create a little bit of a process to at least whittle it down. So I looked for quarterbacks who finish in the top 3. So like true, guys that are going to be able to compete with like a Josh Allen or Hurts. Top 3 quarterbacks who beat their ADP by at least 3. So like the at minimum like the QB 6 finishing the QB 3. That would be, but usually they're later than that. And there's been because a lot of times the quarterbacks drafted like top 3 are just going to finish there. So over the past decade, there's been 22 quarterbacks total. So about 2 of the top 3 per year. So 2 or 3 actually do meet this criteria. And 91% of them, 20 or 22, were drafted between QB 5 and QB 15. So it tends to be the guys like right after the elites that you kind of overlook because you're just trying to get some like value with the late round quarterback strategy. And that's a great strategy. But you don't need a league winner at every position, and you can find like I still would consider, like you said, guys like Love and Purdy. I would consider them league winners, but just for like true top 3 upside, you do want to kind of target guys in that like second and third tier, and generally they've been on the younger end. So about over half have been in year 2 through 5, and about 60% have been in year 2 through 6. So none have been rookies. Like rookies kind of have a little, like they haven't kind of gotten that top 3 upside necessarily. So a number of guys kind of stand out for me. The first is Jordan Love, QB9, 26 years old, 5th year of his career, 2nd year as a starter. Second half of the year, he just went off. The yards per attempt was near 8. He only threw 3 picks, well over 20 touchdowns. And he's got a great young receiving core with Reed, Wicks, Dobbs, and Watson, 2 good tight ends in Kraft and Musgrave. And the offensive line is solid, but at the same time, when you look at the schedule, Green Bay does project to be in some shootouts. So he should be throwing, and they're looking for him to throw deep a little more. And if you just watch him play, I mean, this guy, he's just making some ridiculous throws. The arm strength is there. Everything's there for him. So really love Jordan Love as a guy who, is kind of in that 2nd or 3rd tier at quarterback, but I think can finish, as a top 3 guy. And it would come, he can run a little bit, but it would come throwing the ball. And I think this is where, when you're looking for straight value, it makes sense to just kind of spam these rushing quarterbacks, Daniels, Fields, Jones. But there's usually going to be like 1 or 2 of these just like elite pocket passers that do crack the top 3, and you're trying to find those guys. So another guy, 2 more guys I think fit that mold. One is CJ Stroud. He's obvious, but he's already the QB5, so you're not really a lot to gain there. So Joe Burrow, though, he's at QB7, and so he goes a little before Love. I like Love more, but Joe Burrow with a healthy Chase, Higgins, he's got a bunch of good receiving tight ends. First year without Joe Mixon, so they could throw even more than usual. A lot of talented young receivers to fill that number 3 role. Yosavage, Burton. So a lot to like with Burrow, and he's shown that he can lead the league. Finish top 2 or 3 in passing yards. He's shown that he could throw 40+ touchdowns. So really like Joe Burrow as well. And then 2 other guys I'll mention. One we talked about, Anthony Richardson. I think he could be anything from a bust to a league winner if he stays healthy for all 16 or 17 games. He has number 1 overall upside. He's only 22. He's entering year 2. And Kyler Murray. I think people kind of forget about him, but now full offseason in that offense, an elite number 1 receiver in Marvin Harrison Jr. and a very good tight end in Trey, maybe elite tight end in Trey McBride, and just enough rushing ability still. I think that kind of bounces back now that he's not coming straight off that ACL tear. So I think his rushing numbers will kind of tick back up, and we've seen it. He just has ridiculous ability, just like natural ability to make crazy things happen. So he's another guy where if he stays healthy and he's throwing to an elite receiver like Harrison, watch out. So I think Love, Burrow, and Kyler, based on their ADPs, are the guys I really like. But I could see Stroud or Richardson doing it, but they're going so high already that I wouldn't really count them as league winners, even though I think they have that number 1, QB1 overall type upside. All right, let's go to running back. Who do you like there for league winners?
Yeah, I'm going to just start off with Blake Corum once again. He could be this year's Zach Charbonnet, where, Kenneth Walker was still the lead back. Zach Charbonnet was clearly the backup, and that was that. And he only offered value when Kenny Walker missed 1 or 2 games, I think it was. Or Blake Corum could be this year's Kyron Williams, where, he potentially just leapfrogs a completely healthy Kyron Williams and is the Rams' lead back this year. In that scenario, Blake Corum's the league winner. If Kyron Williams misses any time, he's a league winner because I think he will be, like a top 15 type back if Kyron Williams misses time. So I just love taking him outside the top 40. That's like the perfect time to take a back like this. So Blake Corum is definitely, a league winning potential back outside of the top 40. Another potential league winning back outside of the top 40 is Jalen Wright of the Dolphins. Now, it looks like he's going high at RB45, considering he will be the Dolphins' number 3 back opening the season. But last year proved that this offense is more than capable of handling 2 viable fantasy running backs at the same time. Both Devon Achane and Raheem Mostert ranked in the top 4 in terms of fantasy points per game. So this offense itself is a fantasy goldmine when it comes to running backs. And, both backs are a bit injury prone, and Wright would only really need one of those 2 backs to miss time, I think, to offer, RB3 flex type value or more. And Wright is a very talented back. He profiles a lot like Devon Achane did last year, so he could be this year's Devon Achane. So I think Jalen Wright is a potential league winner as well. And my third one, this is a bit of a contrarian take. It's Jonathan Brooks, who I agree with you is being completely overdrafted inside the top 30. I'm saying do not draft him at current ADP, but I think once the season starts, I don't know if these people even realized he was going to miss the first 4 games, but maybe his owners are, pissed when they realize that. And say after, the first 2 or 3 weeks, they're 0-2, 0-3 because they took Jonathan Brooks as at RB27, float them an offer, pry him away potentially for, a cheap option. And I think Jonathan Brooks could have a similar type of season as like a Breece Hall. That, that's an extreme example, but he's going to be much better in the second half of the season. I think he will potentially be the lead back by then. So I think he's a guy that could be, a second half league winner who, again, is not a great buy right now at his current ADP, but in season, if you were to work out a trade to a frustrated, manager that took him, they need running back help because they need somebody to play. I think you might be able to pry him at a more fair price in season. So I think Jonathan Brooks is a guy that could potentially be a league winner because I think he is, the top running back from this year's class. And the second half of the season specifically is when I think he could be offering RB2 or even more value.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't think about it that way, like kind of buying low on him once he, kind of gets the team that drafted him potentially off to a bad start. That actually probably is the best way to approach Jonathan Brooks in 2024. Running back, I'm actually light on league winners and running backs. Not a ton of guys stand out to me. Rather than force it, I'm just going to kind of go through some guys where I see a path, even if it's a little unconventional. The first is Najee Harris. And the reason I mention him is because I think with Arthur Smith coming to Pittsburgh, you might run more than you ever have. Number 2, I remember a few years ago when, we knew there was this really talented guy in the Tennessee backfield named Derrick Henry, but he was sharing, like Deion Lewis was also there. And they were essentially 50-50 timeshare. And heading into, I think it was, 2019 or Lewis was projected to be like a 60-40 split or 55-50, 45. And Derrick Henry just goes off, ends up amassing over 1,600 yards. And Lewis is just a complete non-factor. I don't even think he got hurt. And Arthur Smith, you never know what he's going to do and how he's going to use these guys. But you always say Najee Harris is the closest thing that we have to Derrick Henry. Jaylen Warren could be, late round pick who already, Najee started eating, kind of getting back some of the workload he lost to Warren, throughout last year, late in the year with some really strong play down the stretch. So I could see a scenario where, Najee gets, starts off with a couple 100-yard games and Arthur Smith just rides him for 20 plus carries. And they just might Najee might be able to get average 20 carries with Warren still averaging 8 to 10 because, given how much Arthur Smith runs and it's a Tomlin coach team, that defense is still going to be hard nosed. So I see a path for Najee Harris to have a Derrick Henry breakout. Besides that, I don't really see a ton. I think the guy you already hit on the guys outside the top 40, Corum, Wright. I think a guy much earlier, but he's not really being talked about a lot. But Jonathan Taylor, he might not come off the field considering the guys behind him. It's just not they're trying to get Trey Sermon as the backup, but then he got hurt. Goodson is the guy with that, he had that infamous drop pass in the winner and end game, and Evan Hull has not panned out at all. So when I'm looking for like a guy who can put up McCaffrey-like numbers, obviously there, Brees and Bijan are at the top of that list, but both of those guys have a little more risk of other guys mixing in. Like, I don't think Brees or Bijan's snap rate has the same ceiling that Taylor's does. And, Barkley is kind of in a similar boat, but he also has like more challenge for workload from like a Gainwell and a Shipley, whereas like the Colts really have a bunch of nobodies behind Jonathan Taylor. So he might, if they need him to average 30 touches and play 90% of the snaps, he could do that for a stretch. And he already was the RB1 overall and being drafted as such. So I just think he's kind of flying a little under the radar because people think, I guess, Richardson's going to vulture all these touchdowns, but there'll be enough rushing touchdowns to go around if Taylor is touching the ball as much and playing as much as I think he is. So I like him. And one other guy I'll mention is Devon Achane, because like I don't think he is. I think he's more of another guy with like a lot of bust potential because he's in like this committee role. I guess he's like a poor man's Jahmyr Gibbs. Like he's not going to get. I don't think he's going to get as much receiving usage, but he has that same kind of big play upside. But he's also just got such ridiculous big play upside that like that's how you kind of have to look at him if you're drafting him at like RB10 or RB12 is like I need what he did last year, but with Mostert hurt and Achane not getting hurt. And like that's a fair possibility, like Achane could have a Kyron Williams like season where he just gets a ton of work because Mostert goes down early. I mean, Mostert somehow stayed healthy for the most part. These last 2 seasons, but it's like the first 2 seasons he's ever stayed healthy, and he's on the wrong side of 30. So if he goes down, I think you like they probably give Achane like 15 to 18 touches per game. I don't think they want to go crazy, but it's kind of like Kyron Williams, where it's like they might do it for a 12-game stretch, and we know what Achane can do with that kind of work. So. Yeah. He's another guy that stands out, but it's really I really think like Najee's the most unconventional guy that I see that like people haven't really seen people talking about because everyone loves them some Jaylen Warren, and I did in the past too, but just because Arthur Smith is here, I kind of see that connection with to Derrick Henry. So
yeah, that's
Najee's my main guy.
That's a good point. It's like a bizarro Derrick Henry, Deion Lewis. I was complaining, like, get rid of Deion Lewis. Derrick Henry should be the beast that he is today. And this situation, I'm like, get rid of Najee. Like, let Jaylen Warren lose.
Yeah, right, exactly. We're down on Najee, but
I am warming up to it. Like I said at the end of last year, I was like, holy shit, Najee Harris is turning into Derrick Henry. They're both like 245 pounds. Similar running style. Yeah, never gets hurt. I don't think he's missed a single game. So I've been kind of warming back up to Najee, former first-round talent, still in the prime of his career with Arthur Smith, like you said, probably a very run-heavy offense. And, Russell Wilson loves checking down to his running back too. So, I'm high on both Steelers running backs. But, yeah, I'm definitely warming up to Najee being essentially, dollar store Derrick Henry right now.
I mean, Bijan had, what was it, like over 200 carries, and Tyra Algier had like another – what was it? 100 and let's see, like there was a ton of rush volume for Arthur Smith last season.
Yeah,
in Atlanta. Let's see. Yeah, Bijan had 214 and Algier had 186. That's 400 carries. So let's say Najee gets 250 and Warren gets 150. Like Najee, you could put up those Derrick Henry type numbers on that kind of work. So yeah. That's the thing with it's like I feel like some of these league winners are just guys that because I don't otherwise love Najee Harris. Or I don't he's likely to lose passing down work to Warren and he's kind of there, but I just see that path to that kind of season, which is what we're looking for. All right, we'll go to wide receiver, but just to remind everyone, all of our fantasy football content this season is at FantasyLabs.com. Our rankings and player projections for 2024, Sean's tiers and more. Our entire draft kit available right now at FantasyLabs.com. You can get $20 off by using promo code FLEX20 at FantasyLabs.com/flex. That's FLEX20 at FantasyLabs.com/flex for $20 off our entire 2024 fantasy football draft kit. All right, wide receiver league winners. Who you got?
So I talked about these guys on the Sleeper Pod, but I also think these guys are potential league winners, and that's Roma Dunze and Brian Thomas Jr., two very, very talented rookie wide receivers that are going around, wide receiver 40, wide receiver 45 in that range. But they both have wide receiver 1 upside long term, and that could hit as soon as this year if they adjust to the NFL quickly and, one or two other teams' top pass catchers miss time. So that's a clear path for them to be league winners. But another guy I think could be a potential league winner this year is actually a second-year wide receiver, and that's Jackson Smith-Njigba, who had a pretty disappointing rookie season, not going to lie, considering he was the top wide receiver, taken in the draft. But his landing spot wasn't ideal for production right away because the Seahawks already had DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. And, those two receivers only missed one game combined. So, JSN was pretty much the wide receiver 3 all season, and that could be the case again this year. But I think he's a receiver that's extremely talented. I think he could make a year 2 breakout year. I would say at the expense of Tyler Lockett, but I don't know if Lockett's washed quite yet. But I think JSN's going to be way too good to be held back for a second season. So he's a guy that I think could absolutely hit and be a league winner this year. We also have to remember that last year he wasn't even healthy to begin the season. He broke his wrist, I want to say, exactly a year ago. It was late August. So he was still recovering from his wrist injury when the season started, and he didn't really look, closer to 100% until after the Week 5 bye. So I think I wouldn't look into his rookie season too much. I think he's got like Amon-Ra St. Brown type of upside if he were to eventually become the number 1 target. So he's a guy that I think heading into this year is being slept on a little bit in the wide receiver 40 range. And again, if Metcalf and or Lockett go down, that's his path, I think, to becoming a league winner. But he's a guy that absolutely has that heading into year 2.
Yeah, I totally agree. I love those picks. I think all 3 of those guys, just young, talented, highly drafted guys. I mean, a guy like Thomas Jr., like we've seen this where a lot of times you think this rookie is going to be like second or third in the fourth in the pecking order. He could just be the best receiver like on the field once the season starts. Like 2-3 weeks in, you're just like, oh man, it's all about like he's Chris Olave, he's Garrett Wilson. You know what I mean? He's just the best receiver on that team. So really like that one. For me, one guy just really sticks out among all others, and that's Tank Dell. I just think Tank Dell is so good. And thankfully, people are down on him compared to the other 2 Texan wide receivers. And I get it. Nico Collins had a massive season last year. Some of that aided by Tank Dell going down midseason. And then Stephon Diggs has been excellent for the better part of a decade, half decade at least. So I get it. But when I watch Tank Dell, I see shades of like prime Antonio Brown. The guy his route running is ridiculous. He gets open with ease, and he has a quarterback who just he's just always knows where he's at and can thread the needle to him in tight spaces. So I think Tank Dell has a very good shot at outproducing Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs this year. I mean, like when Dell and Collins were in the lineup together, it was a lot more, it was very even. Collins obviously pulled away, with Dell on the show. And then Diggs, Stroud doesn't have the same chemistry that he has with Dell or Collins for that matter. And we saw Diggs kind of, like trend downward over the second half of last season. So it's like the order of which they finish, I think it's up for grabs. So I'll take the discount on Tank Dell because I really think this guy is a special player. I mean, he reminds me of like like he's right up there with like Antonio Brown and Tyreek Hill in terms of like, oh man, like I just need to draft this guy everywhere. You know, like I don't care what the price is. I don't care what I'm not going to get into the minutia of like projections or this or that. Like he's just too good. And if he's healthy, he's going to be a top 3 receiver for this team. And I think he has number 1 overall wide receiver upside. Like that's how good, even with Diggs and Collins there. I think that's how good Tank Dell is. So like he stands out well above like anyone else. But one other guy I'll mention also is Keenan Allen. Cause like another guy where it's like, okay, I understand why he's down outside the top 30, but this is a guy who finished wide receiver 8 last year, despite playing only 13 games. So, and remember, this isn't Justin Fields who had the great connection with DJ Moore. This is a new quarterback in Caleb Williams. So it's not inconceivable that Caleb Williams just develops the most chemistry with Keenan Allen, who, as good as DJ Moore is, like I think Keenan Allen's a better receiver than DJ Moore. I think he's a better route runner. Yeah, he's older, but so probably less likely to play a full season. But like I said, Keenan Allen and DJ Moore finished wide receiver 7, wide receiver 8, but DJ Moore played 17 games. Keenan Allen played 13, and now you could get him outside the top 30. That's a league winner right there. So yeah, give me. Always got to ride for my guy Keenan Allen, man.
Have to.
Always.
Maybe have a couple more years, but I think that both those receivers kind of touch on like a bigger point. I think those are great examples, but like Tank Dell and Keenan Allen specifically, think about like if Diggs or Nico Collins were to miss time, Dell would like leap into our top 10, top 15.
Yeah.
But like if you look at other receivers in this range, George Pickens, love him, think he has a ton of upside. If like Roman Wilson misses time, is his projection changing? No.
Yeah, right.
Like, you know, that's Amari Cooper, again, love him. But like if Judy misses time, is he really going inside your top 15? Probably not. So I just think that those guys, the ADP and our projections obviously kind of factor in that, yeah, they're kind of blocked with 2 other great receivers, but there is a path for one of them to miss time. And I think what's crazy is this time of year, everybody kind of forgets how savage NFL is and how many injuries actually happen. Nobody plays in preseason anymore. So, you know, luckily we haven't seen many injuries, but by week 1, we're going to see a lot of these guys, you know, miss, you know, weeks at a time and get hurt and things like that. It's just part of the game, unfortunately. So when it comes to these receivers in this range, if you think, oh yeah, they would shoot up to like a top 15 receiver, just one of their teammates miss time, that gives you reason to draft them over somebody that, you know, they don't have that kind of upside. So when it comes to Tank Dell and Keenan Allen, they obviously have that massive built-in injury upside.
Yeah, very well put. And you also just gotta go with the guys who you believe in their talent and especially their route running. Because look, for example, if you were sitting here and saying the Rams are never going to be able to have like a rookie top 10, top 5 receiver with Cooper Kupp there coming back, even if he's missing the first 4 weeks, you would never have drafted Puka Nacua last year. You know what I mean? Like if a guy is good, the team will throw more and it'll just be synergistic. And I think that's what will happen in Houston. And that's what will happen in Chicago. So I agree. You buy the dips. Like DJ Moore, I love him, but he's the most expensive. So let's buy Keenan Allen, who's been, you know, a top 10 receiver for like a decade. Let's buy Roma Dunze, who, you know, could be the number 1 wide receiver on like pretty much any other team in the league. And then like, let's buy Tank Dell, who's, you know, going lower than a guy in Stephon Diggs who's older and has no chemistry with the quarterback yet. Or let's buy Tank Dell over a guy in Nico Collins who had a big breakout season, but could be a little boomer bust because he does rely on a lot of like downfield stuff. So yeah, man, I think you just buy the dips here and they're just like handing us like Dell and Allen and Adunze. So yeah, just got to take it. All right, let's close it up with tight end league winners. Who you got?
Yeah, so there was a week last season. I dubbed it the single greatest tight end waiver week of all time. It was the guys that were available that everybody was like rightfully targeting were Trey McBride. It was right after Zach Ertz went down. Dalton Kincaid. I think Dawson Knox went down that week. And Jake Ferguson was erupting as the Cowboys' lead tight end. So Those guys are pretty much league winners. I think these tight ends could have similar breakouts at certain points in the season. And I already mentioned it on the Sleepers pod, but I think K. Otten and Luke Musgrave both fit that profile. Otten already has the playing time. He just needs to see the spike in target share. Like I mentioned, ever since he became a starter week 5 of his rookie season, Mike Evans and Chris Godwin have been active and healthy. So if either one misses time, that's a path for him to see the target share needed to be a top 12 tight end. Luke Musgrave, the talent's there. Just the Packers would have to entrust him as being the lead tight end over Tucker Kraft and or having Tucker Kraft go down. But Musgrave absolutely has that type of upside that we saw in, like Jake Ferguson last year. But one guy that I think he's being drafted appropriately, but he has league winning upside is Brock Bowers at tight end 11, because he's the best, one of the best tight end prospects we've ever seen. And as we saw last year, Dalton Kincaid, Sam Laporta especially was a leading scorer at tight end. We've seen rookie tight ends kind of hit the ground running a little bit faster than we've used to see. But I think Bowers specifically has a path to league winning upside if they do end up trading Devontae Adams, in season. Bowers would potentially be the top target in that offense, or if Michael Mayer misses time or anything like that, there's paths to Bowers even hitting if everyone's healthy. But I think he has additional paths where in season he could be offering top 5 upside if Adams were to move on or Mayer get hurt. But Bowers himself has the talent, kind of like what you were saying with wide receivers. If you just believe in the talent, the upside of the player, I absolutely have that with Brock Bowers. So I think even going at tight end 11, it's kind of rich given a situation. It might just be worth it because he does have top 5 upside. And that's certainly a time I think it does make sense to take a flyer on a guy as talented as Brock Bowers.
Yeah, I mean, that he's what was he? They're like, we can't pass this guy up. I know they probably wish they got a quarterback, but yeah, this guy, I don't think they planned on taking him, but they're like, this guy's just too talented. We just got to take him. And tight end is such a wasteland. But I see two guys who, they're in that top 8 tight ends, but I think they could run away with tight end 1 overall if everything goes right. The first is Dalton Kincaid, and I see for him the ceiling similar to George Kittle in year 2, where George Kittle had a pretty good rookie year. And then in year 2, this is before the Niners had, Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk. So their leading receivers, were heading into the year were like, I think Pierre Garçon and Kendrick Bourne and Dante Pettis. So George Kittle goes out there and puts up 1,377 yards on 88 catches and just ridiculous season for a year 2. I think Dalton Kincaid has that in his range of outcomes because we're talking about these Bills receivers and which ones we like to target, but the bottom line is none of them really are proven alphas. Coleman is a rookie. Samuel's never been that guy, and Shakir doesn't profile as that guy. So if Josh Allen's gonna throw the football, they're not he could only be run heavy for so long with Josh Allen, and the Bills, they're gonna have a tough schedule in a very competitive division. So there's a chance that Josh Allen's like, what, F it, I'm just gonna keep feeding Kincaid. What's the biggest knock on Kincaid right now? Oh man, Dawson Knox is gonna play in 2 tight end sets. It's like Dawson Knox really what's gonna stop you from drafting a potential 1,400 yard tight end with one of the best quarterbacks in the league? That's ridiculous. And the other guy, finally, I think it might be Kyle Pitts time, because the difference this year than any of the other years when we were hyped about Pitts is that you have a new regime in Atlanta with Zach Robinson, and they're pretty much all 1-1 personnel, which is actually great, even though Pitts is a tight end, because he's really a receiver. And they're talking about they're playing him a ton at receiver, but the big thing is because they use 1-1 personnel almost exclusively, they're not shifting guys in and out. So with Arthur Smith, it's like Every other play, they're rotating in a fullback, a second tight end, a third tight end, a backup running back, a different wide receiver, like an X, a Z, like a
Keith
this
Smith.
or that.
Got to get Keith Smith.
Got to get Keith Smith in there and spring him for a 25-yard gain because the defense doesn't know what the hell is a Keith Smith. But anyway, the point is that's not going to happen this year. They're just going to have this, it's like the Sean McVay offense where the same guys are just on the field pretty much the entire game with minimal substitutions. And Kyle Pitts is one of your best players. So he's going to be on the field, whether it's in line, in the slot, or even lined up out wide. And with Rondale Moore going down, Mooney can play slot, Mooney can play out wide. So I think Pitts probably plays even more wide receiver because you don't want to play Ray McLeod like 80-90% of the snaps, which is you have 3 receivers on the field literally 90 plus % of the time in this offense. So I think Kyle Pitts is going to have his highest snap rate and route participation rate of his career. And there's even an outside shot. I mean, if Pitts and Drake London get the same amount of snaps, like Pitts could outproduce a guy like Drake London. Like that Pitts has that kind of talent. He's going to have a quarterback in Kirk Cousins and Michael Penix, two very capable quarterbacks, I think. And this is just going to be a much more pass heavy and 1-1 personnel oriented offense. And that's just going to make all the difference compared to like just being in this Arthur Smith purgatory where he was being taken off the field for guys like Michael Pruitt and Parker Hesse. So love Pitts. I think he could run away with tight end 1 overall. Love Kincaid. Think he could run away with tight end 1 overall. So like I'm actually drafting those guys over guys like McBride, who I like, but I think like last season was probably the year to get McBride. Now Marvin Harrison comes in, so that that kind of knocks him down a peg in the totem pole. And Mark Andrews, he's always reliable, but I think he more 2 tight end sets, more Isaiah Likely. He's been struggling to stay healthy a bit. So I really like loading up on Kincaid and Pitts, and you can usually get those guys like tight end 6, tight end 7 in that range. So love the value there.
Yeah, I think this is the first year I'm actually ahead of ECR on Kyle Pitts. I think like his first few seasons, I think we were both like, yeah, he's very talented, but we just don't like the situation.
Mm-hmm.
That has been removed. So he's my tight end 3 entering the season. I think this is the year to load up on Kyle Pitts. So I agree with that.
Yeah, it's just the like night and day. Like if you don't like, and I was skeptical of just how much they would change that offense. So I like the preseason. It's exactly what you would expect. It's like pretty much 3 wide receivers, like 2.98 or 2.95 wide receivers per pass play, which is essentially like all 1-1 personnel.
Yeah.
Every play, which is just beautiful for Kyle Pitts. So yeah, love him as well. All right, that's going to do it for our 2024 Fantasy Football League Winners episode here on the Fantasy Flex. Make sure to subscribe to the Fantasy Flex podcast wherever you get your podcast so you don't miss an episode. We'll be delivering the heat all season long. And don't forget, we have our sleepers and our bust episodes out right now. FantasyLabs.com for all of our fantasy football content, rankings, projections, draft kit, and you can use promo code FLEX20 for $20 off right now at FantasyLabs.com/flex. You can find Sean on X at @_oddsmaker. I'm at Chris Raybon, and we're at those same handles on the free award-winning Action Network app. Until next time, let's get this money.